Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our last day. How sad, right? Everything that's good has to come to an end. So if there's anyone still left outside and if you want to come in, please do so right now. We're about to begin. Today we'll be talking about tradition, a little bit about tradition and the teaching of traditions within universities. And this desire to talk about this a little bit happened in a meeting in Brasilia, where we were in a meeting with Izabela, and we thought it would be very important to talk to Irina. So we talked to Irina, and then she also thought it was a very important aspect to take into consideration. And so that's why we were going to bring this discussion here. We think it's going to contribute a lot to our profession. So we have our PhD professors here, Professor Izabela Brochado from UNP, Tácito Borralho from the Federal University of Maranhão, Izabel Concessa from the Federal University of Pernambuco, and also Chico Simões. He's a popular artist, does the mamulengo, and he will also part of the table. I would just ask you first, before Izabela begins, she'll take over the moderation of the table. I would just like to say that we've included two speeches, two lectures in the program. It was very last minute, yes, because we wanted to take into consideration, that we have people from Singapore and from all over and abroad, and we want to take into consideration their traditions as well. So at the end of the table, we'll give about 10 minutes more to show you some images and some videos. And in the afternoon, we'll be inviting our Japanese guests to make their presentation and talk a little bit about their craft. So let's begin. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, owners of the house. We here welcome you. We are singing to all of you so you may appreciate this. We have come from Brazil, from Mamulengo's country, and we bring here this speech, this small little speech from the repertoire of Maestro Zé Divina. I think I ran over Izabela because I thought I was gonna start. That's right. It's about improv. Well, we started Izabela Brochado from the University of Brasilia. She started out great, isn't it? Excited and on our last day. Good morning, everyone. So she started already. So Izabela, please. And then Professor Tácito Borralho from the Federal. Oh, sorry, pardon. They switched. Afterwards, we'll be listening to Chico Simões. He works with Mamulengo dolls. He's an artist, popular artist from Brasilia. And then Professor Tácito Borralho from the Federal University of Maranhão. And then myself, Izabel, from the Federal University of Pernambuco, right? So let's begin. Professor Izabela, if you want to sing another song, please be my guest. I think we'll leave that to the end. Perfect. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. I've had these last few days ever since Paulo called me, and then I invited me, and I thought about what am I going to talk about. So I ended up getting to the point that I wasn't able to prepare anything, so it's going to be very improvised. However, I want to begin with a question that was posed for this roundtable. How is tradition present in the contemporary processes in puppetry? The traditions can only be present in contemporary processes if we know about them. Knowledge processes, happen through the aesthetic apprehension of the forms, like the public, or through direct experiment, through research, theoretical studies of the many forms, of the language elements, history, and through the understanding of the meanings that they produce from their creators and in the communities that these performances take place. So I can only go forward with what moves me, with what affects me, what instigates me, with what makes me create and what makes me recreate. So I'll be talking briefly about how I got to these traditions. First of all, my experiment has been an artistic one together with Master Chico Simões, who we've played and we've sang for about 6-7 years now, following with Chico with Mamulengo Presepada. So Chico and I, through this experience, that's how I got into this University of Mamulengo tradition, this Brazilian tradition. The second, in my formal training, I did my master's researching about the occurrence of Mamulengo in Brasilia, in the Federal District. Having had a master, my dear professor, already, she passed away, Professor Clélia Costa, from the history department. And then my PhD with John McCormick as my master, who I worked more specifically with 3 masters that work with Mamulengo from Pernambuco, Master Zé Divina, Zé Lopes, João Galego, and Chico Daniel from Rio Grande do Norte State. To all of these masters, I dedicate my lecture. And finally, as coordinator of the popular puppetry theater Mamulengo, Babau, João Redondo e Casimiro Coco, this resulted in Cultural Heritage of Brazil, together with the Institute of the Heritage, Historical Heritage, linked to the Ministry of Culture. This inventory was conducted, resulted in 7 years of research. We also have here on the table Professor Izabel Concessa, who was the coordinator of the first stage of this research in Pernambuco. So we had 5 research centers, one in Pernambuco, one in Ceará, one in Rio Grande do Norte, one Paraíba, and Federal District. So we have here in the table Chico, who was one of the puppeteers inserted into the research, Izabel, the coordinator, and this was an extremely important moment for the recognition and in the appreciation of popular expressions of puppetry in Brazil. In this process, we were able to inventory an extensive number of documentation. We had no clue about the document productions of these performances in Brazil. So there were articles, newspaper articles, audiovisual materials, puppets, texts that were already transcribed in new transcriptions. So this whole documentation today is in IFA, and we are trying to create, through the Central Library of UNIMA, an archive, an open research archive. So we'll be inserting all of this data that we've collected during our studies, and they will be located in this archive, and we hope that this will be available in the future for all of you. And during this registration process, we've also located more than 300 puppeteers all throughout Brazil. A lot of them were known, had already participated in festivals, but for the most part, they had already had the recognition of their own community. So, based on this registry, they had their works and their productions recorded, the presentations, the puppets, and so on. So, this whole universe, I was able to record this entire universe during our trajectory. This is what I try to pass along through my practice, be that artistic practice, academic practice, because above all, we only pass along what affects us. And that's why I have to do this with my students, my public. Without this apprehension, I cannot pass along what I know. So first of all, I need to be affected, moved. And so that's what I wanted to do today, to move you a little, to affect you a little with what we do. To tell you that this puppet theater is absolutely very popular. It happens in small communities, on the streets, in the outskirts. But it has a fundamental importance because through these performances, communities talk about their imaginary, their beliefs, their desires, their fears, their social criticisms, our history as a country that's rich in history, inequalities, a racist country, a homophobic country, and at the same time very generous with what's different and diverse. So there's an incoherence. This is everything that we are. You can just roll on, Amanda. Thank you. These are some of the masters that we've been able to locate. Mestre Zé Divina, Zé Lopes, Severino da Cocada. A lot of the masters that we were able to locate: Chico Simões, Antônio Babal, who was one of the first masters, puppet masters ever. And then we started finding out about this richness, these tents. What do they have here? What are these tents saying? What are these signs and these drawings and these writings, these inscriptions in these pieces of fabric? What were they conveying? Here you have the characters, and at the same time, on the top, you have uh, advertising. So, what was the group? When was it created? And there's also the phone number. Nowadays, if you want to hire the group, the numbers written in there. So what kind of space, what does this kind of space convey? And internally, how do they organize themselves inside this space? In this case, this is a drawing that I've made. I'm not an artist, okay? I don't draw very well, but I wanted to express the way the the puppeteers in Pernambuco, for example, in the outskirts, how they toy around. They sit on top of their own boxes. So this box right here, where this is where the box in where they transport the puppets. They take two boxes with them, one for the puppets and one for the materials for the tent. And they also have a function. They also work with their feet. They kick the boxes and they make sound. And this also gives rhythm to the whole performance. So, can we go to the puppets? So, talking about tradition, it's about all of these elements of this whole dimension. It's amazing of what we have in these figures, in these images, in the construction. What are the materials? The mixture of materials and fabrics, the types of images and figures, their representation, the characters, the freedom in this mixture of materials, like Emilio Borba Filho said, the puppeteers are linked to what instigates creativity. They don't have a fixed location. No one's there to say, you can or cannot do this. What you can or cannot do, this is it's what instigates me and what's available. So these are the notions then that I'm trying to pass to my students when I work with traditions. These are the possibilities that I try to pass to them. Because I try to take my own artistic experiences and pedagogical experiences and try to show them the magic, the understanding, the comprehension, this freedom that you can change and alter exactly because you understood. Therefore, you're able to change. So this, one of the issues that affect the discussions regarding tradition is the idea that sometimes these traditions cannot be altered. The idea, the fixed idea that these are frozen. Anything outside of that would be betraying. Oh, that's upside down, right? It's the James Dean of Mamulengo. He's so charming, isn't he? He's upside down, actually. And these images, these puppets, some of them are part of the archives of the puppeteers. Others are part of the archives from the Museum of Mamulengo and the Museum of the Man of the Northeast of Brazil, Museum of Mamulengo in Olinda, and the other one in Recife. This is my project and that I've been doing and I've did throughout my PhD. So what do they represent? Characters of the community. These characters, they need to instigate students to look at them. Our students, our sculpture students need to look at these figures. That's why I mentioned the decolonization issue. Why do we look always in reference to Europe, for example? Obviously, as an academic, I cannot be against this. What I'm trying to say is that sometimes we really don't know what's actually right next to us. And that's also very rich and an expressiveness that creates meaning to the communities. And this is what I try to work with my students. In this sense, in addition to the images and these shared meanings, my relations to the public, I also work with storytelling structures. What are the stories? What are these strategies that they use in order to communicate with the public? This relationship with the public. In this Moi Moi, I have an article that talks exactly about that. About the dozens of strategies that the masters have in order to communicate with the public. It's extremely rich. So if I'm working, for example, with performing arts artists and with the public that going to be dealing with the public, it's important to know how these popular artists in their own elaborations work and how they create these strategies to communicate. So we work with text and with all of this universe. And finally, I will be talking briefly. I don't know how long I still have. All right. From this experience and how to take this tradition to the performances. Yes, last night you saw a simple story, which was the performance that's based on the tradition of the glove, and that for the most part, in contemporary times, it has been undermined because it's smaller in dimension and perhaps not as spectacular, because it hasn't ruptured and gone beyond the tent, something that's ever since in the beginning of the 20th century, this happened in Europe. But today, the glove, if you think about these strategies, with these new strategies, how can you work with the glove? What kind of technologies are present, inserted? Because when I saw Marcos's performance for the first time, it already existed when I met him. I was stupefied by the technologies that he used actually in order to communicate with that with that frailty, with the whole movement, with the tent. And so I think this is I think this field, I think it should instigate us and should take us forward. And finally, Amanda, can you please? This is just an example of something that I've been working with a lot. These small workshops, sometimes a 20-hour workshop with students. I did this with Mario Piragibe with his class. I went to Uberlândia and we conducted a workshop there. Also with the students in Évora at the University of Évora. So this whole experience based on the Mamulengo, on the texts, on the images, and this whole universe that has nurtured me, and that's what I try to convey to them so they can produce their own scenes with these puppets. And there are so many interesting things that come to life because then you bring along discussions about tradition with dramatic structures that are already fixed, the contemporary topics, gender, issues regarding transsexuality, and these all get mixed. And that's what makes the tradition go forward because it really has an effective communication with the present. Like Edmund Burke, he says that memory is absolutely updated in the present. And that's what I really believe in. I firmly believe that. And this is how we should be working with traditions in contemporary times, either in artistic processes or in pedagogical processes. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Izabela. Let's continue our roundtable regarding creative processes in dialogue with tradition with Chico Simões, the Mamulengo puppeteer. I'll ask the Brazilians that know how to speak English or French that please put on your phones so that perhaps you'll be able to understand. And then explain to me later on. Because we can try to understand what the French or the English speaking people are listening. It'd be interesting if someone could comment. Thank you, translators. Thank you. Thank you so much. We know that to translate is to betray, but I love words. So this whole provocation topic, I think it's one of my favorite ones ever. So I thought I'll start provoking right away because the academies have so much knowledge, and the knowledge that you may be in a lake and you try to decant the whole knowledge of it. And the traditions are the rivers that are flowing around, always renewing and recreating. But afterwards, I thought, well, these are all images, right? I no longer believe in those. I know that here at the academy, there is so much knowledge circulating around, just like a river. And then the tradition, sometimes you also find things that end up becoming sedimented You know, they get stalled in the communities, in small closed communities. It's just a prejudice, my own prejudice against the academy. Perhaps because I was expelled from school, that's why I have this belief, and that's why I'm throwing my own stones at the other side of the lake. But life ends up giving you possibilities and these opportunities. So the fact that I was expelled from school, I think this perhaps took me to the streets to try to sell things at the fairs, and then the peddlers, street vendors who sell their puppets, ventriloquism, their magic, these clowns that play around and open up the circles. And these are they are in front of the tents. So communicating with the public, and sometimes they're there as musicians or like what we call in Nordeste, I don't think we call them anymore, but Arreliquino. He, he was the one responsible for collecting the money. Today it's Mateus who goes around collecting the money, but the Arlequino would collect the money from the public in diverse ways. So that's why, imagine, these artists will, of course, would know how to collect money in different ways because it's necessary. Because not only because they studied or they've read, but because it's a need. They need to collect money. They need to survive. So this training, I think, comes from the customs and the need, I think. There is no concern in maintaining a tradition like it used to be. I think each one of us, when we receive this heritage, because at a certain moment, person realizes that he was passed on a heritage and that's extremely precious. And in addition to giving him, to supporting him economically, it makes him a person who feels good, and he's able to convey this and have fun with other people. So he realizes that receiving this heritage, and if you receive a heritage, I think you have the obligation to transmit that. He knows he has to convey that along, this heritage, and it cannot be done the same way every time. Everything that's alive is constantly modifying. If he's gonna start passing things the same way every time, I think the master is dead. You can just put him in the museum, send him to the folklore, because change, the updating, I think the updating of things, I think, is necessary, and everyone updates in their own way. But how much does each and every one of us change? I think it's up to each and every one of us. It depends on the situation, on the situation that he's living in. Depends on the public he's presenting his performance to, because the public will also tell us. The public responds with a smile, with comments. This is the response of the public, and sometimes this response from the public is what's going to guide us. That's why sometimes a mistake, right, quote unquote, because in this field, I don't think there is no right or wrong. Either works or it doesn't. So there's not going to be any sort of judgment. When I started working with my master, I said, when we're going to start rehearsing, and he said, how are we going to rehearse? If there's no public to rehearse to? You need a public. Of course, you need to present and perform many, many, many times. And I said, well, how is the puppet going to walk? So I would take on the puppets, and I would put him on my hand and try to walk with a puppet, and everyone would start laughing. And I said, And then how is the puppet gonna walk? And then he would laugh at me and say, when you start performing, you'll understand how. Everything is extremely different. Things really worked in a different way back then, and so you start realizing that the experiment, and no, it's not something mechanic. Then no, it's time. It's the time for the workshop. You're gonna learn. No, I think it's living with these things is how we learn. And then I just remembered right now. I never know what I'm gonna see or what I'm gonna say. I only find out what I'm gonna say when I look at the public. That's why I can't prepare ever. And that's I start getting some vibes. So the first time I went to a theater festival, a puppet theater festival, that was in 1982 in Espírito Santo, and I had my backpack on. I didn't like puppetry, and I didn't really like what I had seen until then. And then I arrived there at the festival because there was a friend of mine who was there, and he was going to perform. And I got there. I went to the festival, and Tácito Borralho was the president. And I told him, well, I'm me and my girlfriend were here to participate in the festival. I want to take part in the festival. And Tácito, Nelson said, "Well, are you are you delegates? No, no, we're nothing like that. We're are you like sheriffs or from the police or anything? No, 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 we're not part of the police. We're just here to enjoy the festival. We hitched a ride from Brasilia. Where are you staying?" He asked. Anywhere, anywhere. Doesn't matter. Do you have any money? He said, no, no, we don't. Where are you going to eat? Oh, we'll eat anything that's lying around. That's not a problem. Anything. And he said, you guys are crazy. And then he says, yeah, that's right. We are crazy. And he received us with open arms. And so Tácito is the man who receives a backpacker, and he's always welcomes everyone who comes from abroad, from the outside. No badges, no nothing. Please welcome these people who want to participate, no matter where they come from. And that's exactly what happened to me. And I was able then to watch and look at the master Carlinhos Babao. I still don't he doesn't still doesn't like us to call him master. This word master, he says it's obsolete. I'm a master at perhaps something else, but not this. And so he had lived 3 years with Antonio do Babao, the guy that was in the picture right there. I think it was an honor to be in a picture right next to him and next to Antonio do Babao. Antonio do Babao, just for you to have an idea, he had a puppet called Rei Filipino, Philippine King. It was a mamulengo puppet that was a king. And then there was a whole hierarchy dimension, and the top was the king. And what touches us with the popular puppets of Europe? That links us to the puppets of Europe with characters like the Arlequino, who's not a puppet, but he was present in the performance, and he will be there in the comedy, in the art. And I think one good thing about being ignorant is we need to study, right? And we need to study. If you don't know, go study. When I and then I started traveling around the Northeast, St. Louis, and living and working with various masters. When Carlinhos do Babao was in Juazeiro do Norte, which is an extremely important city, religiously speaking, because there are a lot of popular artists there as well. And I went to Olinda, to Mamulengo Sorriso's home. And here I started having contact with the books. Because Fernando Augusto said, here's all that you need. If it's not in Portuguese, it's in French, it's in English. I'll translate it to you. You can copy everything. I would copy a lot and start reading about everything in order to understand all these things. And comedy of art, the group of Comédia de Arte could present they couldn't present in just in any place. There were these companies that were reserved in the markets. In some cities, only these companies could play, and so these small companies, they weren't able to perform as actors. But because they needed money, they could then perform with puppets. So you would take the Comédia dell'arte and put on the puppet and use the puppet. And so João Redondo, who's presented the I'm here. I'm here. This is João Redondo speaking. Daddy, it's so hot. It's so hot. Daddy, it's too hot. It's not as hot in my country. The Bastião, Mateus, Pirro, the Harlequin, these masks. The actors couldn't couldn't perform with masks, so they would put the masks on their hands instead of wearing them. It works. It works just the same. The public contributes. The public gives you money for it. It has the same energy. It has the same energy. He's playing around. He's performing. He's passing the tradition along, the knowledge that he inherited. So these bridges, and then when you think about all of these masters, they did things in different ways. You may research 5, 7, 8 masters, and if you ask him, is that how it's done? He's gonna say, no, that's not. Of course, you need to read about it. You need to understand that this is how it was done at the time. But things evolve, and things are changing. Things are dynamic. Things are transforming. There is no recipe, and we need to follow up. But we don't know. Well, you can't change, but you can't change, but at the same time, you can't do it exactly the same way. So you need to be a little bit flexible. And today, I say, I'm conservative. I can say that I'm a conservative nowadays. I'm conservative. I'm a conservative guy. I say, look, take it easy. You're changing too much. These young people, you're changing everything too much. No, this is not mamulengo. Just how my masters talk to me. Chico, you're not mamulengueiro. And I said, why? Because you're from Brasilia, and so what? So I'm from Brasilia, and I can't work with mamulengos. Because I don't want to call you a doctor. I'm not a mamulengo puppeteer because, and in order to be mamulengo puppeteers, you need to be poor, you need to be starving, you need to be in your own in the natural habitat. The natural habit is an expression that was used at the time by BTB to say the mamulengo could not come out of the Northeast, could not leave the Northeast region. In the festival in Holland at the time, there was no internet at the time, okay? And they invited and they sent a letter. I, I, I saw the reply. Mamulengo cannot come out of its natural habitat, said the letter, because it's based on the verbal communication. And so it will not be understood in our festival. So you see, the first Mamulengo who left Brazil, well, there was a group that came from out of there, and then we said, look, we'll take people there. But at the same time, they don't have documents or passports or no, we can do it. We'll get passports. They don't know how to use toilets. No, we'll teach them. No problem. They don't know what a hotel is. We'll show them what a hotel is. There's no reason why we can't leave. So there was this whole moment. But now, the moment, I forgive that already. I forgave them because it's all part of history. It's a perspective. It's a vision. And there are a lot of friends I have, that people that I wish them, who wrote me, who have their own wonderful archives, people that I love, but they have this sort of behavior. And how do you fight against this behavior without fighting the person? Especially because it's something that's happening at the time, and that comes from a perspective that actually has the support of the academy. And then just to tell you that I threw my piece at the academy. I had my beef with the academy. I understand why this happens. So Mr. Antonio do Babao, like in the picture that you saw, he passed away. People from the from the Federal University of Paraíba, I don't know exactly who, they went there. We don't, no one know. The widow didn't know. They just came here and took the puppets. They took Mr. Antonio do Babao's puppets and took them to the university. And then when we started talking to the widow, she said, no, the puppets went to the university. And Carlinhos Babao, who was my master, he talked to the widow, and then they said that they took them to the university. So we went to the university. Where are the puppets? No, no one knows. No one's seen them. We went to the foundation of this or that. And then we got there. No, the puppets are not here. Then we come back here. No, the puppets are not here. And so we kept going around, going after these puppets. No one knew about them. And then when we were leaving one day, the cleaning lady came to us and she said, hey, 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 come here. Are you looking for Mr. Antonio do Babao's puppets? We said, yes, look. The puppets are right here. I put them away in a box. This is João Bondade, the puppet, and I'm going to give him to you. You can see that he's a little bit burnt around the edges. They told people to torch these puppets down. The women just took these puppets, they put them in the boxes, and so they wouldn't be burned down. And a lot of things were burned down, and then were burning down. And then she saw these puppets, and she went there and took these puppets away, put them inside a nice little box, and then hid them. So here are the puppets. They were going to be burned down anyway, so I saved them from the fire, and here is João Bondade. This is just, that's how it's done, because when we start talking in these conferences, you just cannot believe that what everyone's day-to-day life is like. It's tough because people change, professors change, employees change, professors have a grant, and then they come and then they go, and if and the people who administrate things, if you don't like it, you can leave, and so on. So it's tough. So it really depends on the person who's there at the time. Our institutions haven't still incorporated the importance of these traditional cultures. They haven't. This is important for our lives, for our identity. Our identities, because who we are, because who are we after all? This is what we are. This is what remains. This is us. This is what remains of our tradition. But fortunately, we've started seeing, because of these kind of projects and work, it started changing my own perspective. Izabela's work, for example, in order to include the other popular puppet theaters, which is Babao, Casimiro Coco, and João Redondo, in the research, it was a struggle to do this, to be able to do this, because at first they only wanted Mamulengo from Pernambuco, and that's what's recognized as heritage. And to be able to go against this political stance, this is a political stance, like an academic stance, with political wills, and to go against that, there was a huge national debate about it. A lot of people were included in this debate, and we were able to call attention to this tradition. This tradition is not something just local, and it's not just folklore like what they were intending. It was alive, and it existed in many states, even Brasilia. Now in São Paulo, they're happening in São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, all nationwide, without any sort of prejudice, because the academy studied it with no prejudices. And so this research that was conducted by Izabel participated and Izabela coordinated was extremely important, therefore, in order to put us on the map. I will now talk about Master Solon, who was the second master who I worked with. Solon, who already had this name, philosopher's name, right? Solon. Solon saw Mamulengo for the first time. I always talk about how the genesis and how things started. So he saw in 1922 he saw Mamulengo for the first time. In 1937 he performed his own Mamulengo puppet performance. I think he was born in the 20s. He saw it in 1932 when he was 12. He was still little, and then in around 1937 he started his own puppet. Just think, put on YouTube Toys of the Northeast, Pedro Jorge. You will see Master Solon saying, you know what, that in his own Mamulengo in 1937 he would include film. Everything that's new, I'm including my own Mamulengo puppets, my performances. He had a telescope. He went to Rio de Janeiro and bought a real telescope, and he would look at the stars. He would charge people to come into his own tent and look at the moon. And he would be wearing a wizard's clothing, a costume, with cellophane, with the white beard and all, and he would stand in the front of the tent and say, "Look, you can pay me 1 cruzeiro to look at the moon." So this Solon guy, he was just a genius. And I said, "Solon, how did the puppet start?" I asked him. He said, "Well, no one knows because the puppet comes before the man." And I said, "Before the man?" "Oh, he was done from clay." "No, that's the Bible story. The puppet comes from the plants, from the trees. We come from trees. There's the corn puppet, right? He has this hair like this and that. So they started becoming human and started walking around. It was made of wood and sticks, and then it became flesh and bone. And so we came from the plants." Master Solon, everybody. Master Solon. He was just a character. And this was just for me to close Master Solon. Chico, this puppet that's here right now will be living longer than you will. You'll die, Chico, and this puppet will survive. So take care of him, he said. Take care of this puppet. Don't change his name. And then, people do performances, and then this puppet has a name and then has another name depending on the performance. Don't do that. Everything that you can imagine happens in São Saruí. Everything that you can imagine exists really in São Saruí. And that's where you'll be going after you die. So when I die, if you think about me in your mind, I'm still existing. Think good things, Chico. Don't think about bad things. Think good things. Because everything that you think exists. Like Izabela said, everything that affects us, right? Chico, you really touched the public here. Now we go to Professor Tácito Borralho. It's hard. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. I think we could have a Brochado e Borralho. What do you think? A duo group. I'm in. It's complicated because he talks about academy in a very honest, sincere way, and I asked Izabela to start our works today because she has a broader sense, and she's much younger. She's a child, really, and she has a broader sense of academia. And I'm a guy who's more popular, with the public. Brasilia is in the center of the country, right? And they work on a tradition that's from the Northeast. It's just fantastic and rich. And there was this whole process of trajectories that crisscrossed, and then they got to the same goal. It's not a migration. I come from Maranhão, a state that's in mid north. It's not northeast, it's not north, it's right in smack in the middle of both. Region of the coconut, Amazon, and because of the drought, and their people came to there and they brought in the luggage called a puppet called Casimiro Coco. Casimiro Coco, Casimiro Coco. He's the same as the Mamulengo from the Northeast, the same form, the same shape and everything. But then all of a sudden he's a puppet who, and Chico, it's still in these people's luggage. That's why Casimireiros, they don't survive much on that. However, us from the university, from the academy, because there is a great tradition, and that's very rich into Bumba Meu Boi, what are the masks, the carnival masks from São João or the Christmas cycle. So we got concerned with having this sort of academic program where we could investigate the puppet, the simplest puppet, which is the glove puppet, and which people really didn't value as much. So we created a project at the Federal University of Maranhão called the Extensive Program of Casimiro Coco, because we couldn't coordinate a research group, but because we were able to deal around, we created a Casimiro Coco project. We created the group of studies and research of puppetry Casimiro Coco, and that's worked. And we have this happening until today. I think we've just completed 15 years. So what happened is that when we're in the academy, especially taking a course on teaching theater, the appeal is the pedagogy. And then we said, well, we're researching puppetry. Casimiro, we went to the outskirts and went in search of people who performed this, and then we created an archive. And now we need to work with this with our students, with a younger generation, and with professors as well. I think it's nice because everyone is at a level. I don't maybe Europe, France, Bahia. I think we're in a developed level in terms of technology. And thanks, Izabela, she helped me a lot with this. But actually, we are still in the process of making our popular puppet theater. We're still trying to make it recognized, respected, seen, and we realized that, and we started doing this in the academy. Casimiro Coco is extremely complicated. It's a mamulengo. This is Casimiro and Quitéria. They're simpler than Isabela's mamulengos. They're beautiful, but these are simpler, but they are just as nice. So what happens? We saw that the construction in wood, it was extremely complicated, the wooden head. So we tried to make things simpler in order to make it easier in school with the teachers and everything. So we took these plastic bottles and we started working with this sort of material. And this was a process that, well, you study Casimiro, you study with the masters, learn from them, the ones that are still alive, and try to think about how we should take them into school, perhaps in a simpler way, in a simpler creative process in order to understand how to manipulate this. And this is what we did. We created Kazi Pet, which is the pet bottle, Kazi Pet. And this stole the fame from the other puppeteer, because when you go to schools, it's just a success with kids, with older people, with professors, and I'll show you later on, because I just wrote everything down, but I'm a little embarrassed now actually. But our study group, decided to follow up on this project, and then they said, let's start with Casimiros. Our group was Casimiro Coco, so let's start with the Casimiro. So we used the plastic bottles, and we created this performance, and very easy and very, very, very cheap, easy to conduct. And then let's start on the research in order to organize all of this. And then let's work first with the study of the masks puppet, because we're talking about puppets. And now it's something that didn't surprise me, but what surprises me is that because we weren't able to realize this, Bumba Meu Boi, for example, is one of the richest things in terms of puppetry. It's a tradition from here, boi de mamão here in Florianópolis, Santa Catarina. But when you go to Maranhão, you actually it's insane, because in addition to the puppets, you still have the costumes. And these costumes, for example, we have 5 different accents to boi, by rhythm, by puppet, by musicality, and so on. And then, so this type of thing made us observe and realize that, for example, there is like Indians, right? You can see Indian. They're extremely necessary in the play, but But then there are some nice Indians that they have beautiful bodies, and it's called Bumba Meu Boi de Orquestra. And that's how I was raised. There was this guy who had sort of a post, and we were created this way. So we saw a Bumba Meu Boi, wonderful Bumba Meu Boi with a lot of musicality, and then they started accelerating the music. All of a sudden, they put on a lot of beautiful women, and the Bumba Meu Boi knelt down in front of one of these women. But these 5 accents remained. Every every puppeteer has a costume. So we have veils, we have helmets, we have wait. I wrote it down because I'm very slow. Veils, helmets, hats of all kinds, and the dance of these caboclos who are wearing these hats is just wonderful. They entertain us in a way, they animate us in a way that you have all this choreography. It's just insane. You can you can look at the boy, and then all of a sudden you fixate your look into one of these actors, and so it's very animated. It has an animation element to it. Boi de Matraca, from the island, there is a character, for example, that's the Royal Caboclo. The dance that these guys perform, there is no theoretical, no theorist that will able to describe how it's done, because I don't know how they're able to stand, how they're able to jump and dance, and because and well, we from Pernambuco, we don't envy that, because we have a lot of these jumpy and stringy things too. But just to conclude the part of the boy, we found a way to structure things. University, we have to structure everything. So let's talk about the Casimiro puppets. Let's talk about these mask puppets. And when you talk about these mask puppets and masks, you think, well, we're going to try to have to organize these within the right periods, because our richness in terms of choreography and folklore, it's good that it's distinguished in good periods. So a boy, then there are the mask puppets, the boy, the man who portrays the boys, the burrinha, and the caipora. If you're from here, you may know that this huge woman that's on top of the boy, in Maranhão we call her caipora, and here we call her maricota. See, maricota. Caipora, it's a huge woman. It's a huge puppet. And this is in São João. And Bumba Meu Boi, there are masks in addition to the costumes. The masks are from Kazumbas, which are more African types of masks. By Francisco and Mãe Catirina, they use sock masks and banducha, and that happens in some boi performance, which are made from urundu. And then the presentation, the performance of Bumba Meu Boi, when it's done for tourists, for example, they celebrate the killing. The killing is the comedy performance, which is a story of the Bumba Meu Boi that's being presented. And in the killing, there's this structure with fixed characters, the play and everything. And what's different is that the masks are complete; they are closed, and the voices are like. That's because you cannot hear clearly because the masks, they wear closed masks, and they have these small mouths made out of fabric, and so you end up understanding what they're about because of the gestures and the sound and not so much the voice. And these masks of Bumba Meu Boi, we've started deepening a little bit of our research to find out about the matrices. And in the Christmas cycle in Maranhão, there are caretas de Caxias. And these caretas de Caxias they are the caretas who are the kings or the clowns, a nega velha, who is the cabeça de fogo, and cavalo velho, which is a little bit different. And in the carnival cycle, we have Fofão. That's a character, that's a wonderful character. And we have Cordão de Urso. We still have two in São Luís do Maranhão, where the bear, the monkey, and everything. But these masks of bears and monkeys, they're very present. So what we're doing now, we are trying to create an archive, a very robust archive, and we're starting to work. Well, we started a few years back, but our entire learning process takes us to create elements in the performances that we conduct. And so we do this sort of translation of the bodily matrices, of the forms, of the animation processes, of the dancers and animators, of the corporality they take, and we also study the repetition of gestures and so on. What's important is seeing that within the animators, the dancers, what's the most important element is the center of the boy, because it's very complex. He's not a common manipulator. He starts getting into a state, and he goes into a state between insane and normal, and sometimes you can see him as an animal or a man or an animal, or he's not an animal, but when you see the puppet dancing, it's just crazy. You know it's there. You can see the feet of the person that's impersonating it, but the way that this person moves and dances, it's just insane. And there are so many animators like these in São Luís. They are just very special. Nabuhin is the guy who works in the outside, and in these huge puppets, they have these flexible moving arms, but the guy that's personating the boy, you really see a real boy. A boy would be a bull. You see the guy portraying the character of the bull, and it's just special. I think we can try showing a few pictures, because whenever we work with this, we try to use a performance. These are cazipetes. We built a cazipete, which is these are two casimiros playing just like kids do, and then one of them says, "Look, I'm tired of playing this. Let's fly a kite." Use, kites, right? Papagayo, it's called in the Northeast. Pipa, it's called here in the South, but it's. So they said, I'm tired of this. Let's fly a kite. So Casimiro is fantastic. He's just fantastic because in this play, this play goes through a lot of kids' toys, and the students, they were able to do this, and then all of a sudden the kite is magical. It goes, it does all the movements in the sky, and then all of a sudden one kite cuts the line of the other kite, and then one of the kids' grandmother says, okay, the play is over. So what happened is that people said, well, this kind of puppet is very interesting because it's more agile, it's more flexible. Let's try to do other performances. And though the Olympic torch in the city came to the city, and so they were taking artists and groups in order to do this Olympic torch performance. And one of them stole the torch from the guy who was running, and so that was another performance. And when you get to São João, we have Casipete in São João, the Boi Todinho with all of these puppets, and it really works. They have, and it's so cheap to do, and so it actually raises a little bit of money for my colleagues. So this is São João. There's the boy, and that's the miolo de boi right there in the middle. This dad Francisco, mom Catarina, who's pregnant, and we conducted a study. This is from my thesis, my dissertation, and how the bowl in the center of the bowl works. I could just put the basic steps, the initial postures. For example, in soliloquio is when the bowl is dancing alone, when the puppet is dancing by itself in the circle. And so he does wonderful things. For example, there's an initial posture which is to raise the bowl, 2, which is to balance the bowl, which is sort of doing a movement like this. It's tough because I have just the beginning of each step. Then in the soliloquio, then you start dancing. He starts trembling the bowl around. The bowl starts trembling around. And then in the dialogue is when the bowl you need to dialogue together with other characters, and then you try to, the guy comes with a rod and he does a number of gestures and dances that get rid of this rod. And then another dialogue, the bull is dancing with the burrinha, and here the bull is being sacrificed, is when he dies. So the guy here already takes the rod, holds the bull, ties him down, and then this is how he dies. So the study of each one of these gestures and movements, it has a very dynamic sequence. I just wanted to show you how the bull dies. It's in prostration mode. And then Kazumba masks. These are masks for the most part, anthropomorphic, but I wasn't able, because I was a little lazy. There are some other types of heads which are even higher towers and much more exaggerated. So we started finding out, we realized that most of them were made of steel or rod, of iron, but today these can even be done with foam. They are very light and they're very beautiful, but a little more too updated for my taste, too modern for my taste. And here, can just go back a little. Then there's mask on the left, on the corner. It's a mask made from fabric. The other also made from fabric. And then behind there are a few masks that are supposed to be towers. These masks, sometimes they are animated even. They can move the chin, but I don't think it goes anything beyond that. They just dance going around. This is a common mask, Dad Francisco. So you can see that his nose is gigantic. It looks like a huge cigar, and that's his nose. And then the guy that's wearing a mask on the burrinha, he doesn't need actually to be wearing a mask. And then we have Caipora, which is that looks like Maricota. She has a small face. And on the right, Urubu Jereba. These are mask puppets that can be included or not in some comedies when killing the bull. And then we have banducha. He even has a face that's made out of paper and glue, but it's also a mask made out of raw leather. And then we have a mask of kazumba that's mixing. The ears are made from a more flexible fabric, but the sculpture is always made out of wood, not made from foam. It's either fabric or it's either wood. This is a foam mask, like, because the photographer sucked. You can see that the nose is normally very grotesque and very long, but I caught it in an angle that you're not able to perceive the nose. Sorry about that. And then the bear. Here is the mask of the monkey, and the bear is on the right, and you can see it's made from clay. They use tabatinga, which is a clay that's closer to the region, to the sea. And while it's drying and it rains a lot in Carnival, they use candle wax. They go to the cemetery and steal the candles, and they do this. This is made from the remaining of candle waxes from cemeteries in order to make it waterproof, and so they can still make a lot of forms from that. But normally it's one for the monkey and one for the bear, and then the same thing happens the next year. And sometimes even with made from the bags of cement bags, not the cement itself, but the material of the bags. These are two types of careta de Caxias. Normally it's made out of straw. You can see that it's woven. And these are the kings, and at the same time they are clowns. Careta de Caxias they are just wonderful puppets. Here in this careta, we have two interpretations of Cabeça de Fogo. This is Nega Velha. You can see that its face, there's a small flashlight or a small candle in order to give it the brightness in the eyes. And then the performance, that was one of our performances, a kid's performance. We reconstructed the head, and we put a light inside. And this is how we learned to do these masks with a cabocão. And we started working with this in the universities. This is a mask from a master's degree professor. So they're normally not very skillful, but we can see that you're using shoe boxes with no metals or rods or anything, just tape, and you start using these newspaper pages, and you put them into balls and you glue around. These are grotesque masks made from shoe boxes, like I was saying before, but they're done in a much lighter way by using shoe boxes. These are students from the Federal Institute that conducted this workshop in São Luís. Grotesque masks. More grotesque masks. This is a performance made by students using masks and sheets. They try to avoid using any more extra money because they're poor, so they need to work with the sheets that they sleep in and the masks. It's a way to appropriate, even. It's more dynamic and faster. These are exercises, public exercises, and now let's play around with the sheets, and that was a performance in the previous slide, and these are the exercises. And then there's something that we've learned. This is a little bit of a mixed learning, but the man who builds these masks, who makes the fofão and the bear's mask, he does this kind of process in order to make giant puppets. So we use a little bit of so in order to raise a little bit of money, we don't have a lot of money, so let's try to make Santos de Roca in order to make the Christmas nativity in live size. So we took the student as a model, and we discovered a material. Everyone discovers something when they want to, which is graffiti paper with ordinary white glue. So we did the form, the mold. We used the mold in an inverted way. We didn't have technology and not a lot of material either. So this is what nativity looked like. We used wood, a little bit of metal, and then the nativity is built. And this is just an experimentation. They're trying to make giant dolls using foam and other kinds of material. This was also a production wearing masks. That is the process of the ants. There was a tribunal in order to judge the ants who were eating um, the food from the priests. And so we played around with this story, and we ended up creating a tribunal to judge these ants. And that's it. Thank you, Professor Tácito Borralho. And now, oh, now it's my turn. Can we switch places, Chico? Do you mind? First of all, I wanted to say that it's a pleasure to be here with my colleagues talking about this topic. It was a pleasure and a scare at the same time because, can I say? Because of a communication problem this week, I learned that I would be a moderator, and that in addition to being a moderator, I will also be a part of the round table. And now I am the moderator and the speaker as well. My gosh, well, it's a pleasure, but also a scare. And so this week, talking with the literature professor about the classics, he reminded me of Fedra from Rossini, that I thought it was perfect for this moment. My gosh, what can I tell you? Where should we start from? And now, taking this into account and thinking about where I should start from, I decided, and I'm going to be reading because Professor Tácito he's a little bit disorganized and I'm much more disorganized, so that's why I wrote it down, and that's why I decided to start talking about an experience, a classroom experience that's being developed this semester in the theater teaching program, and therefore a training course for professors who will teach about, especially in primary secondary school, in the theater discipline. It's a 120-hour workshop. And before the semester started, the students came to me to question me, what would the project of the discipline be for this semester? They would tell me that there was a great expectation regarding this discipline and a certain anxiety as well around what the proposal, what the project would be for their class. I confess that I had my doubts whether these students would keep on being enthused once faced with a proposal that I would be presenting them with for this year. The construction of a performing arts exercise based on the Mamulengo's tradition. Last year's class developed a very different project that awakened their interest and the empathy of the internal and external public towards the university. And this project, which is called Mini Festival of Animated Creatures, because they are small projects and they are very short, very reduced, and they involve very updated forms like Lumbi Lumbi Theater, who has been a success right here, and the bodily figures and the objects, and even old ways like puppet theaters from the 19th century using a more updated approach. This project was worked in the Edital Cultural last year, titled The Bridge, the Scene of the University Theater. I think maybe you've probably heard about this notice, and which gives the public the artistic execution that results in the process of training in universities and schools and theater schools. And during this performance, the public would have to choose to a performance. This performance chosen by the public was the mini festival, which demonstrates the increasing interest of the Brazilian public for contemporary ways of puppetry, showing that it's a public that's very much attracted to this theater and for the novelties and the possibilities that it offers.
The students, they are also taken for this interest and curiosity with the more contemporary way and the several possibilities that are opened in the last decades around the installation of animation theater. Now, uh, nevertheless, because of the great interest that they have showed, the new group has received very well the return to the tradition of Mamulengo. It was a way of popular theater, um, which was traditional in the Northeast. The enthusiasm could be understood from certain particularities from the context of students and course, because Pernambuco is the land of Mamulengo. It means that everywhere in Recife, Zona da Mata mainly, where you have the bigger number of mamulengueiros, you can meet these manifestations. It's easy for the a person from Mamulengo to have been to a representation with Mamulengo or to be familiar with the word Mamulengo, knowing that it's a traditional manifestation of culture from the state. We shouldn't forget the cultural policies that they have valued the traditional expressions of Pernambuco. Amongst them, you had Mamulengo, and the power of diffusion, the recent initiatives with expositions, art craft, fairs, and puppets. Between the 50s and the 60s, you have a great interest for the Mamulengo, studying or recreating it, and you have valuable contributions to this kind of art. I can't forget the names of Hermilo Borba Filho and Ariano Suassuna. We should add a movement of promoting the Mamulengo, the federal public policies, the work of IFAM that has elevated Mamulengo to immaterial heritage of Brazil. These particularities left Mamulengo in the memory of Pernambucanos. In the theater course of Pernambuco University, you have a subject which is called History of the Puppet Theater. So it is before the practical exercise. It values the study of tradition, and the proposal to be developed with the students, it starts from the text of Ariano Suassuna, a novel writer, dramaturg that very famous, and you have a movement called armorial. It's an erudite culture, but it's impregnated with popular characteristics. So you have several uh, puppets inspired by the Bamalengo. So you have the elaboration of a text in a collective way. But we chose to use a ready text that is already an intermediation and the factual tradition and the work that is supported by this. By that, you have two recent plays, and it was written in the 50s and the 60s to be represented with Mamulengos, Marido Domado, inspired in Shakespeare story. And the second, we have read, discussed, studied, and made some necessary adaptations taking into account the text and the present, because they have been written decades ago. So we have the characters, we have conceived their psychological and physical profile. We have used the manipulation of puppets of stick and light, and we had been given more importances to gestures and movements that are according to the Mamulengo. We discussed texts that they deal with this popular theater from the Northeast. We have watched the videos, and this shows given by the Moblengueiros. We consider that the representations, they represent two structures, one organized from a series of short scenes without logical connection one with the others, and another structure which is based in an only plot, and then we are going to constitute in the future, because this process is ongoing process. We are going to work collaboratively some small scenes that are going to be put in the middle of the stories of the author, in the beginning and in the last part of the play. So we are using the two structures used by Mamulengos. And lastly, we go inside the workshop. Can you put the pictures of the workshop? Luckily, this material was in my camera, so I can show you. The students, their Mathiant regards to these small pieces of wood, mentioning our colleague from Senegal, our first, our first puppet. See, they were thinking if these charters were going to come from Ariano Suassuna, from them, from the repertoire. They formed the stories represented by the Mamuleng people from yesterday and today. They made their own puppets, and they try this traditional principle that organizes the creative work of Mamulengos. They are producing their own puppets, starting from cheap materials. So we invited to give these classes in Madeira, uh, sorry, Murungu wood. Antero Assis is invited because he is a popular Mamulungueiro. And we have programmed visits to Mestre Miro workshop and to watch their shows. Now with the already completed sculptures, they put they put something in the wood to protect from humidity. All the levels forecast for this work are usuals. The levels that the work has followed are the common layers, the common steps to the preparation. And I just reporting an exercise of scenic construction is still ongoing. Along the discipline, we show the students what are the main traits of this way of theater, its characteristics, techniques, artistical elements, how to build the puppets, but it's not enough. We try to explain to the future professors and artists the place and the importance of research in all the construction process, direction, uh, acting. It even if it comes from a text or not, the research should be in the center of the work. The director is a researcher, and the student that studies Mamulengo is the same way. That's why the workshops are so important. In this experience, we invite Antero Assis to give this class, this workshop of building puppets with Murungu wood. We have adopted as a principle the fact that we can build shows or scenical exercise from the material of tradition. But this approximation with the academical world, with the universe of tradition, couldn't be resumed to a cold copy. We try to put the students near this universe, uh, showing them the importance to observe the work process and the creation of the artist, the values, the artist's mentality, and the characteristics of the milieu where their art is inserted. We want them to understand that the stories have a sense, that they are artistic doing is rooted in the social context from where they take their meaning. It implies in knowing details like the building of puppets, the ways you built your tent, to know the charts by their traditional names, but also to know a word about over this word he's going to create. This is important to try to understand the way of creation of the people who's going to play. Of course, it has limits because it develops inside the restrict limits of a subject, of a discipline. I have mentioned Mestre Miro. I went to search the woods for the manufacturing of these puppets. And in his workshop, the sculptured puppets scatter all way around, waiting to receive the painting and the decoration, and waiting to be recruited some show. They form the scenario of a recent talk in Carpina, Zona da Mata, in Pernambuco. There is a certain moment in our talk he has mentioned the economical difficulties of this Mamulengo people. They have difficult to find shows, and he articulates the figure of devil with these difficulties, not only the mamulengueiro, but from the musician who is a player, harmonic player. And just by chance, I brought this material. It's there. If I have time, we can listen from Master Miro. It's more interesting. I have a story as well. And he continues saying that yesterday and today there is a moment where the autonomous worker, the artist, he could make more or less money. This oscillation situation was lived by the player, the music player. The music player says to his mother, I walked all this world and I didn't find anything to play. So he informs his mother where he's going to be around and trying to use his instrument. Miro says he doesn't want to pronounce the word uh, hell. There is a black horse with a man on top, and the unknown has hired a music player to play for these guests. But when Robert started to play, the man said stop. The animal, he says, he doesn't mention devil. He says the animal. The because the devil didn't hire the the musician because he plays making a cross signal. So in the part, the music player sits in in a box and plays for the host, the guests. The music player thinks that there's something wrong and starts to play the Father Noster, a prayer. And I don't want this shit to go away. the music player puts a lot of money in the music player is his accordion player, and he then he finds the musician living in a completely poorness. I am playing for a box of floor. He puts his hand in the pockets, but the money becomes just fabrics, and the coins they turn into glass. So he has heard this story, and his father said that it happened in Paraíba. This is one of the stories told by a malungueiro. He believes firmly in what he tells, in this crossing of the reality and the fantastic, in another way of knowing, different from the knowledge that our students receive in the academy. So the research work of the students that are going to show a piece for Mamulengos with the word of Mamulangueiros has a great importance, because it allows it to put the academical knowledge in face, or in front of other knowledges. And then we have an ethical commitment from the professor, under the point of view of artistic formation. The the comparison with the story of Master Miro, it gives the academicals the opportunity to have contact with the world of Mamulengueiros, and to have respect to this rustic world, the knowledge of the social relations in the middle that is inserted. And then you also know the material difficulties that is with the work of the artist, the one that tells a story, and he goes for a place where he can make some money. It's a versatile art of the mamulengueiro that manipulates the puppets and makes the dialogues. Sometimes he sings and play an instrument like Master Miro. So they have no limits to their imagination, but nevertheless they are caught in the rural places. So material difficulties, violence, precarious life, the joy, the smartness, and oppression. At the same time, the exercise of this meta language so common in the spectacles, in the shows of Mamlengos. The students could see that when they have been to a show of Mestre Miro in Galeraçu. In a certain moment, the charter of the police officer, uh, he complains about Master Miro, and the stick is not uh, very well fixed, and then he can't give Master Miro a beat. So you have the real and the things, they are linked in a story that was told by his father. That was, it happens in a certain time where the devil shows up and tries the man. So you can't trust the evil. This story of Master Miro, if you want, I can show you, which is much more interesting than me telling. It allows the students to get in contact with a world of values that are still in the world that they live on. So thank you very much. Do you want to listen to the master telling the story? Could you put the video, please? Amanda. Sorry, I got confused with the names.
colocando.
I'm so sorry. It's not possible to translate. We have several regional accents in Brazil, And this kind of accent is really completely different to what we are used. So thank you for your attention. Professor Paulo is going to tell us about the next activity. Thank you. Thank you, Chico, Isabel, Tácito, Izabela. It was wonderful to make this cross debate with all this emotion and about the traditions, the importance of teaching tradition inside the universities. We are going to invite Dennis and take advantage of his presence here. Then he could show us a little bit of Singapore. Dennis has helped to organize the Commission of Youth in UNIMA in Singapore, and he organizes a festival of puppets in South Asia. I pass the table to Terence. Michelle.
Selamat pagi, and kalai vanakkam. These are the languages of my country in Singapore. How do I say this? Let me try. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for letting me speak, Paulo. Estou feliz por estar aqui. Obrigado, Comissão e UDESC, right? So thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here halfway around the world. Okay. So I'm just going to... sorry. Yeah, okay. So I came halfway around the world for this, and I want to kind of tell you why, and thank you so much for giving me your time. So first, I'm gonna tell you where I come from, and then after that, what I've been trying to do with puppetry, traditional puppetry, and the challenges that I face, and finally, why I think it's very important for us to keep our traditions going. This is Southeast Asia. Yeah, this is Southeast Asia, and it's around the size of Brazil, actually. So my great grandfather, he came from up there in Fujian, China, Southeast China, and they speak different dialects. They have different beliefs. They are living and next to the water. It is very different from North China, Beijing, Northeast China. It's very, very different. We are sea people, fishermen, and we come from that side. And then during the revolutions of the 1900s, the people of China, these people started to come down to the rest of Southeast Asia. So it's similar to people from Boa Vista moving all the way to Ponta Porã in Brazil. It's around that distance. It's that far. Yeah, but by ships and boats and stuff like that. So and so we ran away from the war, and my grandfather, he was moved to Singapore when he was 4 years old, and he doesn't speak English, he doesn't speak Mandarin, and here he is in this colony of the British. So this is the Southeast Asian region, and it was colonized by the Europeans, by the Dutch, Portuguese, English, and French, because it is in the center of the trading of the world. Because if you want to move things, if you want to move tea from China to Africa or the British, you have to go through here. So a lot of countries, the Dutch East India companies, British East India companies, they would take over all these countries, and you can see up there the French took Laos and Vietnam, the British took Myanmar and influenced Thailand, the British took Malaysia, the Dutch took over Indonesia, Spanish took Philippines, and Portuguese took East Timor. So why I'm telling you this is because this is a region that is actually very homogeneous. It's very easy to travel, it's very easy to trade, it's very easy to progress, but it has been divided by politics, by languages, by religion, and after the Cold War, the leaders of Southeast Asia continue to use the colonial methods to divide us. So the people, like for example, I cannot speak my grandfather's language because my government told me that I have to speak what the China speaks. So I have to pick up the dialect of Mandarin. 我需要学普通话，所以我虽然需要学普通话，可是我是地球人。哦 ，Okay, sorry, I'm just telling my China friend over there. So yeah, it's very divided, and but the traditions are still there, and we are trying to protect them. My wife is now currently back in Singapore while I'm here with joining you all, because she is documenting as much as she can about the traditions back in Singapore that we are still trying our best to protect, even though we lost so much of our understanding of the past. So that's the dragon dance meeting the lion dancers. Yeah, and these are the 12 zodiac warriors in masks, and this is still happening on the island that I live in. And I'll just share a little bit about the other things that I've been doing with traditions. Because I lost the language and because I lost the culture, I still try to create puppet shows using traditional stories. At the very least, even though I lose the methodologies or the puppet skills, we still try to create what we can, what we still remember, and we still try to tell people the stories where we come from. The other thing that I try to do is to introduce culture to other youth and children. And in this case, the two students who are practicing now, they come from Brunei, which is the North Island of Borneo. And in their country, the Muslim law is very strict, and they cannot hold a puppet. If you keep a puppet at home, you will be arrested by the police. If you are a male and you are not in the mosque praying on a Friday, you will be arrested. If you are homosexual, you will be stoned. So this is law in Brunei. So, but because of the idea of cultural political exchange, we are allowed to introduce Chinese puppets to Muslim people. So that introduced them something, and that is one way I have also used traditions for education. I also use it for counseling, and these are these elder women are with their daughters, and like I said, we don't understand our grandparents or our parents because we changed traditions in the middle of the 1960s. So here we are trying to bridge the gaps between mother and daughter using puppetry. And even though the mom has forgotten so much, she has dementia, she has amnesia, but when she saw the puppets, she suddenly yelled out, potehi, which is hand cloth puppets. And then she started engaging her daughter, and then she started saying telling many more of her childhood and her past and what she used to do. So we use these puppets and we use these traditions to bridge the gap between the two. And finally, these are the festivals that I have done in Southeast Asia. And what I'm doing is I brought the 10 countries of Southeast Asia all together, again, using tradition, using puppets. Because even though we cannot come together for other reasons, for politics, language, and religion, I can use puppets to bring us together. And you will see UNIMA Japan here in the middle, because the Japanese government, they sponsored the festivals for 3 years to sort of apologize for the things they did to Southeast Asia during World War II. So I managed to have a chance to do these festivals for 3 years in 10 countries with 10 exchanges and 2 festivals. So the process, the creative process becomes of how do we connect with traditions. And this is an example of a Cambodian artist, Man Kosal. I think Theodora remembers him. Man Kosal, and learning from and comparing his traditions with the tradition of Malaysia. These are Kelantan puppets, which are now no longer legal to play puppets in the northern part of Malaysia because it is of a different religion. Because wayang kulit is actually an Indian Hindu tradition, which the Malays of Southeast Asia have already been doing, and then Islam came in, and then they used Islam to control the people, and they lost their tradition. But here again, with for diplomacy, we are allowed to revive and exchange ideas, and they worked very well together. This is another example of Ling from Malaysia, a Teochew Chinese puppet player learning about Yokte from string puppets from Myanmar, from Burma. So we did this for a couple of years, and we finally created this show where we mixed Vietnamese water puppets with a shadow puppet, Spectom from Cambodia, with Japanese puppetry style, wayang kulit, Laos, Thailand, so on and so forth. And we did all this for 3 years. But the funding stopped, so now I have nothing to do. But anyways, this is the last example. You see Irina over there. She's part of it. And this is another example of how we use the puppets to integrate with one another, where a puppet is puppeteering another puppet. So because the Bruneian was this Brunei actor was very uncomfortable with using other people's puppets, with using a puppet from another culture and another religion. So we said, why not you use their puppet to play your puppet? And then he accepted, okay, I can do that. So again, this is how we creatively use these things. So now this is what's happening now in Singapore, in the island. And I want us to go back to why puppets are so important, especially the traditions. These are I don't think they used to be puppets, but these are heads of the spirits, and they pierce the worshippers through the arm with the head, and these 10 people are anointed to be able to carry the spirits around. So they poke the thing through. Then this is the puppet master up there. That's the puppet master, and he's blessing the puppeteers and the musicians on the forehead, the heart, and the hands. So he blesses them before they start the ritual. And are you able to, John, are you able to play this one? This clip? No? Okay. Anyway, this is a ritual. He's slaughtering the pig. He's, this shamanistic and animistic behaviors, they still exist, but this is the last one. It's the reason why my wife and why we moved to this island, this last village, because we want to try to protect these traditions. This is the last, yeah, there you go. Thanks, John. Yeah. So they do this out live for everyone to see. It's part of the ritual. They are, yeah. Okay, so they're still doing that. Yes. And then you see the 5 warriors, they're coming down, and they, yeah. And here is another evidence of a bit of idea of puppetry, whereby the god up there, he's sitting on the sedan, on the chair, and the people are carrying him around. And so they are moved by him. So they are puppeteered by the deity, by the totem, the little totem that comes down to celebrate his birthday from the temple, and they are carrying him, and they shake around so much, they move around like that. They're like, oh my gosh, the deity is happy, he is going around. So they are moving him. In their heads, they are moving him. So every year they do this. And only 10 islands, there's about 10 temples in Southeast Asia left that still do this, and 2 of them are in Singapore. So we are here trying to keep this going. And this is the deity. This is the deity that's moving from the temple to another temple. He's enjoying his birthday. Yeah. And everyone's celebrating his birthday. Yeah? Yes, these are the zodiacs. Okay, now, puppetry. So, after all that ceremony, then the next thing that happens is that the puppet master brings out the puppet and they perform shows. And the puppet leads the worshippers, leads the temple managers to pray to the deities. So he is their avatar. He is the person in between that guides them. And then after that, it's the people, and the people continue performance. And my wife currently is now with them now, like 2 hours ago, drinking beer with them. But the thing is that they are very open. It's a very public, open place. She was going in there, and she was asking, "Is it okay?" And they said, "Yeah, it's open, it's public. Just join us. Just come backstage. Just do what you need to do. It's fine." And then a friend scolded her and said, "No, our deity, our God, does not understand her." Then the puppeteer was like, "Don't worry, our God has translators. They will understand her. She's okay. She can talk to them. It's fine." So they continue. And thanks to that, can I play this very quickly? I just want to show you how the standard of puppetry is left. It's not good, okay? My apologies, but the sound? Yeah, so this is the story of the bride and groom, and before they start, they come around to do the ritual. This is day 4 of the 12 days of celebration. As you can see, there's no audience, there's no one. They're playing to no one. They're playing to the deities, they're playing to the gods. And the problem I have, as I was bringing up the last time, was that because there's no audience, there's no demand, the traditions are being lost. They no longer learn how to sculpture, they no longer learn how to perform. The women up there are opera singers who come down to do this because they have to, not because they love it, not because there is an audience. Can you bring it forward just a little bit, Amanda? Can you bring it forward? Yeah. Sorry, just the forward of the. Just no. I mean the video. The video. I just want you to go back to the video. Yeah, video somewhere in the middle. Yeah. Okay. Stop for now. Yeah. Yeah. And they're in the middle of performance, and they're still like, "Oh, can I have 2 coffees?" and stuff like that. They're still, it's not serious, and unfortunately, that's bad for us because it means that slowly there is a decline, and then suddenly we lost our beliefs. Okay. Next slide. Yeah. They're still in the middle of performance, by the way. Yeah. And okay, next slide. Yeah. Next slide. Yeah. So no audience. And you can see that they're singing and all that stuff, but they're not actually manipulating. They're just enjoying being there. Right. So I'll just try and quickly conclude. So sorry, I have no time. So I believe that the beliefs are still important because all these things, they still belong in the spectrum where man and object are, interactive. And the stuff that I've done, this is in the east of Philippines, where the super typhoon Yolanda, it displaced about 1 million people, and many parents lost their children, many children lost their friends, and there is nothing left. It wiped out a lot of homes, schools, and everything. And this was 2014, and I went there, for 1.5 years to try to teach them how to teach themselves, to try to teach them to talk about their grief and their pain. And because there's nothing, everything has been destroyed, so we are just using whatever rations, whatever we can find, whatever plates, plastic plates, rations, medicine boxes. We're just doing what we can because it's impossible for us to send so many education materials because it's 1 million children. They will have to learn how to do it themselves. And this is where I learned that puppetry and our traditions really help people through their grief and their pain, and I don't want to lose that. So I just want to, and it was very painful when I do my work. One of the worst comments I ever got was from a teacher who told me, "Oh, you're like a child who never grew up," because she did not believe in what I was doing, because she has no memory of puppetry. But I hope that in the future we won't be rejected for what we do, And I hope that UNIMA and the Training Commission, that you will help these parts of the world where we have been broken up, whereby we are really fragile, we are very insecure, we are puppets of the state, really, we are puppets of the government. And we are very afraid to be part of the bigger world. We are very afraid to be committed to do more. And I hope that this puppet world can come in and help us. So please keep on going, doing what you're doing, no matter what happens, no matter lack of funding or whatever it is. I mean, I work with no funding at all. And it's fine. You can do it. So please keep on going. Keep puppets going so that we know how to be human. Okay? Obrigado. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Terence. Bom, peço desculpas, a gente teve que prolongar um pouquinho, mas era importante a gente fazer essa troca e a gente começou um pouco tarde. Então peço desculpa aos tradutores também pelo nosso atraso de hoje, mas eu fiquei sabendo que ontem à noite parece que